Hello. I wanted to talk today about intuition, a little bit about that. And it's hard to put your finger on intuition, what it is. And I thought maybe an example of how it worked would help you familiarize you with when you're feeling it in a reading. So I thought I would tell you a story about an intuitive thing that happened, how it turned off and on. And it might show sort of paint a picture about what it is we're dealing with there. I used to be into archery, and the kind of what I was into was traditional archery with a regular bow. I used to use a recurve and a long bow type of recurve's like a long bow, just a stick of wood, and um, and that's what I shot. And I used to make my own arrows, and um, and that was that. It was a lot of fun. I used to shoot in the backyard, and I also shot down in the basement. I had two ranges, and it was something I enjoyed. I never went hunting, and in Chicago, you can't really do much with it, so I can't just walk around with a bow. So it never really went anywhere. But I was in the backyard, and we had about a 20-yard target, and so I was going to shoot in the backyard, and with that kind of an archery thing, you don't have any sights. Using a recurve bow is just like I said, a traditional bow. Use wooden arrows, and it was a 55-pound bow, 60-pound I was pulling, and you just point and aim. And when you feel you have the target, you're like that. When you feel you have it, is when you release the arrow. And you eye down the top of that arrow to your target, and you release. So my first shot, I had a dead-on bullseye, right dead center of the target. I thought that's nice. And again, like I said, what you're doing is you're aiming, and you're when you feel it's right, that's when you let go. And I was in the zone, and I hit that target dead center. So now the second shot is what's going to be harder to do, because the second shot, I usually shot about a half a dozen arrows, and then I would go get the arrows and do it again. But that second shot, now what I'm doing is I'm trying to replicate what I did in the first shot. And so there's no sense of feeling of this is right anymore. Now what you have is I'm trying to duplicate what I just did. Now I'm using my thinking. And you're never going to hit dead on by doing that. So my second shot was a little off the mark. It was still on the target, but it wasn't a bullseye, because I was trying to replicate what I did the first shot. My third shot, now I'm back to normal again. I'm not trying to reproduce what I did the first shot. So I did that in the second shot, and it didn't work. So now I'm back just the way I was initially. And so you draw back, and when you feel it's right, you release the arrow. And when I felt it was right, I released, and I split my first shot arrow. I hit dead center again, and that's called the Robin Hood. And I split the arrow of my first shot. So I had a first shot dead center. Second shot was off the mark. Third shot, I split the arrow dead center. Wooden arrows, cedar arrows. I split that one right in half. The third shot was right dead center inside the middle of the first arrow. And that's the sense I'm talking about. Is my first shot was a feeling. When you're aiming and you're thinking that, okay, this is right there. I have no sight. It just feels right. And it works. The second shot, I tried to replicate what I did the first shot. So I'm not using that sense anymore. Now I'm using my logical thinking, trying to reproduce and replicate exactly what I just did. And it doesn't work. If you got a first shot dead on, your second shot's going to be harder because you're trying to reproduce what you just did. So the second shot was no good. But the third shot, I was back on track again. And obviously, I was in a zone that day because I split the first arrow. There's no sights on a recurve bow. It's just a piece of wood. It's just a bow. It's a nice piece of wood, nice bow. But it's just a feel. You point and you look down the top of that arrow at your target, and then you're just judging how much of an arc you're going to need by your distance, raising it up or lowering it, and you shoot. But you shoot when you feel it's right. You feel like you're locked into it. And that feeling of being locked in to dead center is a sense. And that's what it is. Now you can get a compound bow with sights on it. I didn't want that. Compound bow is a 50% let off. So if you're shooting a 60-pound bow at full draw, you're only holding 30 pounds of weight on your three fingers. And you could hold that all day aiming. And you got sights on that bow. It's a lot better weapon, a lot more accurate. It's a better bow. But if you want to use your sense of it just feels right without sights, just the feel of this wooden bow I got in my hand instead of this machine type bow, that's using your senses, a different sense. And that's the closest thing I can think of is intuition. When you're locked into a card and a meaning, it's that same feeling. I'm seeing this card mean this. And you could have a strong feeling on that with that reading. I see the chariot number 6, and I see that being something you got to watch out for. Something's coming that you're going to have to take on. That might be a strong feeling. When you have those kinds of strong feelings, you'll know it. Don't think that they're nothing silly. They're not. Pay attention to that because that's your intuitive side. And that's how it works. And that archery thing is maybe another way of just talking about how intuition, how it works. So you can get mechanical. You can have sights and play the machine game, or you can use your senses. And which one's more consistent? Machine. You'll have a lot more better shots with a compound bow with sights, but it's because we haven't really developed that sixth sense, that extra edge that you can just know it's where it is. And so it's just an interesting story about that. And that is a feeling you'll develop because once you feel it, you'll know it. And you won't feel it with every reading. You won't feel with every card you lay down, but you are going to have that as you do readings. And this one card's going to be screaming at you. And you're going to know what you feel it means is what it means. Just like I knew that was dead center. without sight, just felt it. And getting a Robin Hood like that is not rare. It's not something that a lot of shooters have had that, but you're talking usually with shooters that have compound bows and sights on them, and they're shooting, hundreds of arrows a week, so. But that was an interesting thing that happened. And nobody was there to see it but me. But it did happen. And that sense is just something that you gotta feel it, and you can't describe it, you can't explain it, but you will know it when it's there. You'll know it, and that's the best way to know it, is just to feel it. When you feel it, you're not going to know why you know. Just is. And you'll have that with the cards. And I think that's really where your insight comes in, is when you start to develop that, and you'll develop that by using the cards, and just do one reading after another, and after another. All of a sudden, something's screaming at you over here. And you say, okay, that's what that was. And just like anything else, the more you do it, the better you get at it. The more you develop those muscles, or whatever they are, that you develop as you do something over and over again. So intuition, and the tarot does open up the intuitive side, just like archery did with that. It's just a sense you can't explain. So there's all sorts of different ways to feel that extra sense, that edge. Call it what you want to call it. Call it anything you want. Intuition, a sixth sense, whatever you want to call it. But it's there. It's there. So again, you can look into the cards all you want. You can look into the images on a deck and say, well, this is what's going to make this. I want to use this deck because these images are what I feel are more accurate than those images over there on that deck. Again, I think it's all really, that's important, that you're using a deck you like to use, but tarot cards are tarot cards. You got a six of swords over here. You got a queen of cups over here. You got the hangman. You got those cards. No matter what deck you're using, you got those same cards. So learning the application is what's really important, and you'll get that sense no matter what deck you're using, because it's not coming from the cards. It's coming from the application that you're using the cards in. I think that's important. My last YouTube, I was talking about chess and how you can take chess pieces and compare them to what we do with the deck of cards. We look so deeply into the symbolism of the tarot. We're now looking at the application. And if you look at chess, you're not going to see any old movies of Bobby Fischer talking about, or Boris Spassky talking about the designs of these pieces on a chess set. They're talking about the games they played and how they played these pieces. That's the whole thing to it. The application. Incidentally, a chessboard is always the same, 64 squares. So they're playing on the same board every time. And that's another reason why I think it's important to have a card spread. I think a card spread is like a chessboard. Keeping it the same is I think, to your advantage. Keeping that consistent is good. And even maybe having the cards be consistent. I don't really think the cards are that important to be consistent. I use different decks, but um, the layout I think is important to be the same. And like I said, my Celtic Cross is what I use. So I'll end it with that. Again, I want to remind everybody, Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, is the 11th, May 11th, is our monthly Zoom. There'll be a post to it down below, tarotmaps.com. And 12 o'clock Chicago time, 12 o'clock noon. And all are welcome. And so that's that. I'll end this with a funny story going back to archery. And then it's just a short story and then nothing to do with tarot cards. But I set up a target in the basement of the house when I first got into it. And I put a target in front of a window downstairs in the basement. And I shot first arrow, I shot it out, and the arrow went right through the target and through a window in the basement, and the arrow was in the front yard. So I shot that arrow and went through the target and I heard chink. I said, oh, geez, I just broke a window. And I thought it was kind of funny. I come upstairs, tell Linda, she said, you're nuts, you're shooting an arrow down in the basement. So I had to fix the window and I made the target where it stopped the arrows. And I used that range down there for a while. But we were at a Chinese restaurant, Linda and I, and we were talking about stuff with another couple there, and we were having dinner together. This was a nice restaurant. And for some reason, we got on the subject of me in this archery thing I was doing. So I told this story I just told you, where I'm down in the basement, I set the target up, and I went back and I shot that first arrow, and I went right through the target and went chink, and I broke a window. And as I said, chink, the waitress walks by with a bunch of food in her hands, and she's an Asian. She's a Chinese restaurant. She walks by and she turns around, she looks at me like she thought I called her a chink. For those of you who don't know, chink is kind of a disrespectful slang term for an Asian person, a chink. So she walked by and I'm talking about this broken window. And I said, yeah, I shot that arrow and I went chink. And she stopped and she looked at me like, what did you just call me? And I had said, no, I'm talking about a broken window, an arrow, and she. So they probably spit in my food before they gave it to me, but had it coming. Anyway, that had nothing to do with tarot cards. Keep throwing cards, we'll talk soon.